All right, that was Falabi Noel and Nosa with a track that is perfect for a Friday morning. Just moving to the left, from the left to the right, get the groove going on and get prepared for a brilliant weekend. And that brings our time to 10:31. Like I promised you guys before now, we will be having a chat with Emilia Asim-Ita as we talk about the Aldersgate Experience 2.0, which is slated for Sunday. All right, so we're going to go straight to the phone lines right about now, where we have a veteran. I mean, she's a veteran when it comes to media and mass communication. So just maybe she will be interviewing me, and I'll be the one. I'll be the one being interviewed. Let's get straight to the phone lines right now, where we have Emilia on the phone. Good morning.
Morning, Tola. Thank you so much for having me.
It is such.
I'm not sure if I'm the one you're introducing, but I'm glad to be here.
Wow, so good to have you with us on the show this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's delve straight into it. First off, how are you doing today? How are you?
I'm good. I'm grateful to be alive. Alive and thriving and grateful.
Okay, great. Now, you have, the reason why I introduced you that way is because I know you have an MSc, a BSc in mass communication. I know you've done quite a number of things on the media and probably still doing right now. I want to ask real quick, what is that one lesson that you'll say you have learned from your years of mass communication, both digitally, on every possible platform you've been on? What would you say is that one lesson that you've learned?
I think the lesson that I have learned all my years from communication is never to assume anything or take it for granted.
Right.
We must always communicate our thoughts, our position, and ensure that the other party understands and is on the same page with us.
Wow. And I think that's kind of borders around listening, active listening, when communicating.
Yeah, listening, clarity of thought.
Right.
And an articulation of the same, because sometimes communicate when in our minds we aren't really clear about what we think, the particular subject matter. Sometimes when we communicate, the way we articulate, the other party, the receiving end, hears or perceives or understands something completely different. And I think it's a cliche when it's said that the biggest challenge of communication is the illusion that it has taken place. So a lot of times we think that we are communicating, but we're not. So that's why, for us in our organization at AML, our mission really is to ensure that we're understood, because we've seen people go wrong, even with the best of intention, many times.
Wow, that's profound. Very, very profound. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Now let's get into what we are 2 days away from, the Aldersgate Experience. And this time around, the theme for this particular one is youth, Catholicism, and spirituality. Now, let's talk about some of the challenges that we as global citizens have experienced in the last couple of months. We have been the lockdown, the global pandemic, and all of that. Now, one of the effects of that was not going to church physically. I know the lockdown restrictions have been eased and all of that, but within the borders of that, what would you say is the effects of these things on a young Christian?
A number of things. First, I think is the destruction of stereotypes. Young people have been born into particular way of tradition of worship. professional term is organized religion. You show up in church every Sunday. You do things in a particular way, and can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yes. So being born into this organized religion, and this particular way of doing things that for many years they've been seeking answers to, and have been able to get such answers. Asking a lot of questions and being told rhetoric most of the time by their parents, and sadly deciphering the fact that even their parents and possibly their parents' don't understand or have never asked these fundamental existential questions about their faith or religion, as it were, before. Now, that, because a lot of young people often encounter or have to deal with that reality at different phases or points in their lives, then this happens. So sort of disrupts and shakes off a foundation or sudden realization that they had just come to about their faith. That church leaders would say one thing in the pulpit in front of the congregation and do something else in their private or personal lives. So I guess the effects of the pandemic have been multifaceted with respect to young people and their faith. So apart from the disruption of stereotypes, then we've had what is called the new normal, where even going to church, aligning with regulations itself is a threat to life, a threat to health. And then now also watching the utter confusion and the near helplessness of the church, as it were, because if we're going to be honest with ourselves, I'm not sure we dealt with the pandemic the way that we should have, given that almost 90% of us, I mean those who are alive, had never experienced the pandemic, but the initial reaction of the church was funny. First, there was a bit of a resistance, the denial, and then the lockdown. Then you had this, in Nigeria, you had this face-off between the church and the government, where the organized associations clearly rebuffed, or let me not say rebuffed, clearly were uncomfortable with the lockdown and the shutdown of worship centers. And at some point, it didn't seem like the leadership of the church had placed the lives and the safety of their congregations and their flock above the need to continue their life as they knew it, or continue the worship and the as they knew it. So you have young people observing all of these things. And for once, having, especially those who are in the Orthodox churches, haven't made a lot of clarion calls, a lot of requests for the church to go digital, for the church to embrace technology and to embrace more contemporary ways of worship that had been for many years resisted, not embraced, not considered important. Now, watching all of these in a timeline and finally watching the church succumb to it and then struggle with it, you'd agree with me that the first few Sundays, even up to Easter Sunday, where we all had virtual worship, it was the first Easter Sunday of my life where I wasn't standing in a cathedral singing lustily, from, with all of my heart and screaming, "He arose, he arose," with all of the excitement that I would muster every single Easter. But the first time it was quiet. It was in front of a laptop. It felt different. It felt strange. It almost felt fake. It felt like I hadn't experienced Easter because it just felt very abnormal. So for such young people, watching the church stutter and stumble and now attempt to put in the investment and the work that they should have in technology is also an experience. And then now finally coming to the realization now in the new normal that, there's more to church than showing up every Sunday. there's more to church than the means of grace and having Holy Communion, because by law, well, unless those who have had private meals, as it were, spiritual meals in their homes, the Orthodox Church does not even encourage or support that you break bread by yourself at home. It's a holy sacrament that is reserved of ordained members of the clergy. And I guess in some denominations, deaconesses cannot even administer sacrament. And deacons cannot administer sacraments. Lay preachers, lay readers cannot administer sacraments. It has to be a reverend father or an ordained reverend in church. So we've come this timeline many weeks after officially not having enjoyed the means of grace. It's an interesting time to be alive, really.
Wow.
And I think for young people, they're just taking all of this in and wondering what faith would be like for them now, in the near future, and maybe in a few years to come.
Wow. Okay, let's zoom in a little on this example you just shared about the communion. Yeah. So if we let's assume the lockdown restrictions were not eased, and it was the lockdown was extended for a longer period of time. For certain other people or certain other denominations, they can break bread themselves, without having some persons do that for them. So for a Catholic, yeah, in this case, judging by the evolution of the times, do you think those changes could actually, and all these things that we're experiencing now, can actually lead to certain changes of, do I say doctrinal? I wouldn't want to say doctrinal changes, but cultural changes as to how certain practices are done even within the church?
Okay, so first, I'm not a Catholic.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a Catholic. I'm a Methodist.
Okay,
but
okay.
For Orthodox churches, they're similar, right? And I think personally, that even the church has not realized how much has changed in the last 60 to 20 weeks. I've had a few conversations with some members of the clergy in my church. And speaking to them, I'm smiling, in my heart. And I look at them and I realize that they haven't come to terms with the new normal and how it's going to affect the church. So you would find that as much as churches have opened, and I speak for or from my experience from the Orthodox end, I know a lot of new generation churches, because I don't want to call them Pentecostal churches. It has a different meaning altogether. Okay. But the new generation churches, because we're all Pentecostal, but the new generation churches, I noticed a number of them didn't even open their doors immediately. The government lifted regulation. Yeah. And for me, that was very sensitive and circumspect of those leaders to say, look, we're not so crazy about you all coming to church. Your health and your safety are more important to us than you gathering. But I would note from some churches that I've observed online that the physical attendance is still very low, with more persons joining in via social media platforms, which is a complete opposite from what used to be the status quo before the pandemic. So what we don't realize in the church is that it's never going to be the same. It's hardly ever going to be the same. Coming to church now, in physically showing up in church, would almost be, and I hope not, but it seemed like it would almost be a special rare occasion, that there will be a lot more virtual members, permanently virtual members, than physical members in the next few weeks and months and years. And what that does for church leaders and ministers and members of the clergy and administrators and leaders is they must reorganize and reconfigure the way the church is run and its programs to now cater to this new normal, especially for young people. Because if they don't, then they stand the chance of losing a number of them altogether.
Right, right.
So a lot of the emphasis, a lot of the investments on physical worship, renovation of cathedrals, purchasing the latest pipe organs or manual organs, or a lot of the emphasis and investments in the optics, as it were, especially for Orthodox churches, need to go now to investments that reach people personally. And I'm not saying the investment didn't reach them before I'm indicted. But they must clearly redesign and rethink it, because the cathedral, the history, the significance of a lot of those things have changed and may stay changed for a very long time. So for young people, for the first time, it's sort of freedom for them, because they now have the opportunity to customize and to determine the pace and style and form of their worship for themselves.
Right.
They no longer have to be forced to conform to routine, to order in that sense. They no longer have to show up at a particular time or miss out altogether. You can now have church on demand, as it were. So when you get out of bed eventually on Sunday, you can, whenever you want to start your service, you start your service. Wherever you want to sit, you sit. You don't have to sit in a particular place as you would when you walk into a cathedral and you are ushered to sit somewhere.
Yeah.
Wherever you wake up, wherever you are, that's your service, that's your experience. And so it's going to force all of us to reconnect and find that unique and personal connection with the Holy Spirit, and to get the true sense of meaning from our worship and time spent with God, rather than congregational worship, as it were, where the emphasis is on carrying everybody along at the same time.
Right. Wow, it's been such a great conversation. It's really good you pointed out at some point while we were chatting that you are not a Catholic. For some reason, probably because of the theme of the Aldersgate Experience for this Sunday, youth, Catholicism, and spirituality. I think maybe not only me, but other people will just think it was probably restricted, or it is restricted to Catholics. Because I was going to ask you already, like, are non-Catholics expected to attend?
Definitely. It's a lesson. See, it's a lesson for us all. I'm not a Catholic. The guests are Catholics, or the three guests that are speaking to us are Catholics. We have Reverend Father Pascal Anthony, who is the past director for youth, the Catholic Archdiocese of Lagos. He did phenomenal work with engaging young people. And I'm pretty much, I would call him a sort of, maybe not an expert, but he's leading through policy amendments. He's championed changes that engage and affect young people in the Catholic Church. And if you know the institution that is the Catholic Church, then you have a sense of appreciation of experience. And we have the of the vibrant transformational group or sect. Young people who are Catholic, who have redefined the sense of meaning and worship, again, still within the tenets of Catholicism. And it's a growing community, and she and some of her friends have led and championed that for a few years. And we have Dean, the corporate executive by day, and Dean was on his way to a Catholic seminary, and then something happened.
Wow.
And he didn't end there. He didn't end there. Dean is also our third guest. And so I'm pretty excited. I'm looking forward to the conversation, because we have two young people and one middle-aged person, and each person has a unique experience and a unique understanding about Catholicism and youth expression. And they don't do nothing else about it. But it's not just about the Catholic Church, right? In Catholicism and some of the experiences that they'll share, it gives every other person, I believe, would get a lot of lessons and insights. And not just for young people, even for church leaders and administrators, as to what the new the new imperatives and the new reality is for all of us as believers. So it's something that I'd encourage everybody, to please join in and participate. It's going to be a great conversation.
Wow.
And I look forward to it.
Great stuff. So it's happening this Sunday. Kickoff time is 4 p.m., guys. 4 p.m. this Sunday, August 30th. And it's going to be live on Aldersgate on Facebook. You could also, join the Zoom webinar. The link is now available on their Facebook page and, of course, on their Instagram handle. You can just follow our handle and you'll find that right there. So you can be a part of it on Sunday. Once again, thank you so very much, Emilia, for being a part of the show with us, for sharing all your thoughts. Quite inspiring.
Thank you for inviting me.
quite inspiring.
I never thought I never prepared to speak about all of the things I did, but thank you. I had a wonderful conversation.
Quite
and I
insightful.
hope we speak sometime.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Have a lovely rest of the day and see you on Sunday.
Thank you so much. See you.
Yes, ma'am. Bye. Okay, that was quite a conversation, and yeah, it's not just for Catholics, like you heard. A lot to be learned. The conversation really never ends. We're in an era. PraiseWorldRadio.com.